America, land of the free, home of the brave, and increasingly, a nation haunted by the specter of school shootings. We see it on the news, hear it whispered in hushed tones, feel it in the pit of our stomachs, a collective unease that chills us to the bone. It's a uniquely American nightmare, a recurring horror that shatters the innocence of childhood and leaves communities reeling in its wake. The image of a school, once a symbol of hope and promise, is now forever tainted by the possibility of violence. The hallways where laughter and learning should echo are instead filled with the ghosts of lives lost, futures stolen. Each tragedy is a gut punch, a stark reminder of our collective failure to protect the most vulnerable among us. We tell ourselves it won't happen here, that our town, our school, is different. But the truth is, no community is immune. The bell tolls for all of us. It's a national crisis that demands our attention, our outrage, our unwavering commitment to finding a solution. We owe it to the victims, to their families, and to ourselves to break this cycle of violence. The time for thoughts and prayers is long gone. The time for action is now. Let's talk numbers, cold, hard, and impossible to ignore. Since the turn of the century, the United States has witnessed a surge in school shootings, each one a horrifying data point on a timeline of tragedy. We're not just talking about high-profile cases that dominate headlines, but a steady drumbeat of gun violence that has become sickeningly commonplace. Remember Columbine, Sandy Hook, Parkland? These names are etched in our collective memory, grim milestones on a journey no nation should ever have to take. But for every high-profile tragedy, countless others fade from the headlines, leaving behind a trail of shattered lives and communities forever scarred. The statistics are staggering. According to cite reputable source, there have been over-number school shootings since year, resulting in number deaths and countless injuries. These are not just numbers, they represent real children, teachers, and staff whose lives were cut short, their potential extinguished in a hail of gunfire. It's easy to become numb to the statistics, to view them as abstract figures rather than human lives. But behind each number is a face, a name, a story. We must never forget that. Let's address the elephant in the room, or rather, the arsenal of elephants. The United States has a gun problem. We have more guns per capita than any other developed nation, and our lax gun laws make it far too easy for weapons to fall into the wrong hands. Now, before anyone starts screaming about the Second Amendment, let's be clear. This isn't about taking away everyone's guns. It's about having a sane and reasoned conversation about responsible gun ownership. It's about background checks, red flag laws, and closing loopholes that allow individuals with dangerous histories to obtain firearms.
We need to ask ourselves some tough questions. Why is it easier to buy an assault rifle than it is to vote in some states? Why are we so resistant to common-sense gun control measures that are supported by the majority of Americans? The gun lobby will have you believe that any attempt at gun control is an attack on freedom. But what about the freedom of children to learn without fear? What about the freedom of parents to send their kids to school without wondering if they'll ever see them alive again?
Section 4. Beyond the barrel, mental health, and a crisis ignored. Now, let's be clear. Guns are a huge part of the problem, but they're not the only factor. Mental health plays a critical role, and it's a conversation we need to have, even if it makes us uncomfortable.
Many shooters have a history of mental health issues, and while it's crucial to remember that mental illness does not equal violence, we can't ignore the correlation. The reality is, our mental health care system is woefully inadequate. It's underfunded, difficult to navigate, and often stigmatized.
We need to invest in early intervention programs, make mental health care more accessible and affordable, and create a culture where seeking help is seen as a sign of strength, not weakness.
Teachers, parents, and community members need the tools and resources to recognize warning signs and intervene before tragedy strikes. Ignoring mental health won't make it go away. It's like ignoring a ticking time bomb, hoping it won't explode. We need to defuse this crisis before it claims more innocent lives.
Section 5. A toxic cocktail media culture and the seeds of violence. Guns and mental health are critical pieces of the puzzle, but we can't ignore the role of our culture and the media we consume. We live in a society saturated with violence. It's in our movies, video games, and even our music.
And while exposure to violence doesn't automatically create a killer, it can desensitize us to its consequences. Then there's the cult of celebrity that surrounds school shooters. The media, often inadvertently, turns them into anti-heroes, their faces plastered across screens, their names etched in our minds. This notoriety can be a perverse incentive for individuals seeking fame, however twisted.
We need to be mindful of the messages we're sending, both consciously and unconsciously. We need to teach empathy, conflict resolution, and responsible media consumption. We need to glorify peacemakers, not perpetrators.
We need to create a culture of trust and communication in our schools. Students need to feel comfortable reporting threats and concerns without fear of retribution, and we need to empower parents, teachers, and community members to play an active role in creating a safer environment. We need to invest in school security, but not just metal detectors and armed guards. We need more counselors, social workers, and mental health professionals who can identify at-risk individuals and provide support. First and foremost, we need common-sense gun control. Universal background checks, red flag laws, banning high-capacity magazines. These are not radical ideas. They're measures that have proven effective in other developed nations. Section 6. Turning the tide solutions for a safer tomorrow. So what can we do? How do we stop the bleeding? It's a complex issue with no easy answers, but there are concrete steps we can take to make our schools safer and prevent future tragedies.
Section 7. A call to action. Our children, our future, our responsibility. This isn't someone else's problem. It's not a political football to be tossed around for partisan gain. It's about our children, our future, our collective responsibility to create a society where schools are sanctuaries of learning, not killing fields.
We can't afford to become numb to the headlines, to accept this as the new normal. We can't let fear paralyze us into inaction. We need to channel our grief, anger, and frustration into meaningful action.
Contact your elected officials, demand change, support organizations working to prevent gun violence.
Have uncomfortable conversations. Challenge the status quo.
The only way to stop school shootings is to stop accepting them as inevitable.
We need to be the generation that says enough is enough. Our children's lives depend on it.